Hello, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Zodiac Trading. So today we will have another discussion of what would happen to China, and of course, I'm going to refer to article of Paul Krugman's greatest one of his latest heat, and I will compare a little bit about the Chinese economy system and also the Japanese economy system. But I will promise I'm going to make a series of videos explaining in details of what precisely happened in Chinese economy because recently I got plenty of these noises out there in the financial market claiming that Chinese government is going to have another rebound, that their massive stimulus is going to work, and all these kind of nonsense. So I kind of feel obliged to make videos explaining my thoughts on Chinese economy system and also the Japanese economy system. And I think it's probably going to contribute a little bit value for investors, for global investors nowadays. So let's begin with this article. What happened to Japan? And Paul Krugman is a Nobel Prize winner and economic prize winner, and so people, media were asking him, what would be his take in China on China issue. So he said he in his opinion that he believes that Chinese economy could be worse compared to Japan. So I think from my observation, I've been living in China for more than 10 to 20 years. I went to very different provinces and I spent time with them, and I even have a lot of relatives in China. In that case, I understand what precisely happened in China, and because of the censorship in China, and also because due to the limit of the language barrier, it's extremely difficult to know what's actually inside of that economic black box. So in general, I think Paul Krugman had a point because that I truly believe that Chinese economic system is going to fall worse than Japan. At least I could say in relatively short period of time. I think I think at least for 10 years, Chinese economy is going to perform a lot worse than people have anticipated, and I think that's inevitable. Even right now, the Wall Street and entire mainstream media is still having these slight hope of that China economy is going to bounce back and is going to be, replacing the dollar system. It's going to have internationalization of renminbi and all these etc. And honestly, I don't believe that. But I did make some videos explaining that I think there will be a multipolar system, and I think that the dollarization process is ongoing, not necessarily going to be replaced by the renminbi, but it's probably going to be replaced by multi-currency system, in which I will explain in a future video. Okay, so right now let's go back to the Japan and China kind of comparison, because what happened is the Japanese economy system is they used to have these middle class shrinking, they have aging problem, and they used to have huge real estate bubble, and people are really kind of speculative on Japanese Nikkei, and they were suffering a huge bubble bust, and you have lots of books, at least in the airplane shelf, you see a lot of books praising the Japanese model, praising that how Japanese economy is going to be, the new superpower, and if you kind of relate to that kind of memory, then you can understand it really doesn't happen to Japan. Now, right now, Japan economically it could be viewed as very important role, but I don't think at any point Japan can be viewed as a superpower up to this point. But of course, Tokyo, and I've been staying in Japan for quite some time, and I enjoy going to Japan as well as Shanghai. I love Tokyo, I love Shanghai, I love many cities in China. don't get me wrong. I'm not of one of these regularly Chinese hater. I don't hate Chinese people, and I myself believe that I'm Chinese people as well in other term, even though I don't agree what they do 100%. It's like a typical American. You by being American doesn't mean that you have to 100% to agree with what all the presidents should, are doing, right? So I view myself as a Chinese people, but I have a slightly versatile kind of cultural background. So I travel a lot. I spend time with local people. I, go and I, discuss very intensive, very in-depth conversation with them. So I spent, 1 or 2 years in Tokyo and lived there, and even had Japanese girlfriend and etc. So I understand a little bit of what really happened in Japan from local point of view. So Japan, like people were very because of that the economic bubble has crashed, so it kind of suppressed the Japanese people average taxpayer their willingness to take any risk. So you don't see a lot of volatility in Nikkei stock market. You start seeing more average Japanese people going to kaisha, going to corporate, and they take jobs. They invest, they save a huge amount of money. Most of the money they are deposit in their forefathers, maybe their parents, and they prefer to invest in bonds and rates rather than stocks. So right now, as far as I can see, right now Nikkei is still trading with a heavy discount because if we compare with what Nikkei actually was a couple, decades, years ago, you realize that right now Nikkei is still trading at a significant discount, even though recently the market index has surged uh, significantly, but still, for me, that kind of index hasn't show the full potential of most of the corporate value or company values of Japanese company value. And right now, I think if we compare Nikkei with Shanghai Composite Index that we're seeing right now, Shanghai Composite Index hasn't been able to retrieve its previous high for many years. Okay, so we're compared back to what happened in 2015. There was a bull market back then, and then before 2015, there was another bull market during the 2007. So in 2007, the Shanghai Composite Index was trading at 6,000.7.2, and during the 2015, the Shanghai Composite Index was traded at 5,000. Right now, still far, it still have quite a way to 4,000. So we're not seeing much progress when were made in Shanghai Composite Index, and also I don't think in China that because in China you have a dual currency system, which I will explain in future video, that they have created huge amount of debt, and they discount and they cash out most of the property, their real estate sector. And for example, like Evergrande, which is one of the biggest company in China, what they do is they try to over collateralize their houses because they're real estate developers. So they develop a lot of real estates. They have lots of lands. They have a lot of houses. They use that houses for collateralization and then to get more loans from the bank. So the banks are creating huge amount of bad debt. The reason why the Evergrande hasn't been bankrupt is purely because the government, the Chinese government, is so reluctant to bankrupt Evergrande system, the Evergrande company, because you have to understand in China that there isn't a free market. Okay, so the government intervene with all sorts of things. So in this case, Evergrande is supposed to bankrupt, but then with the help of the government, Evergrande as a largest real estate developer is becoming a zombie, right? So um, Chinese government is right now doing a lot of debt restructuring, helping, helping, basically giving free loans and basically helping out Evergrande to sell off their assets for cash, so they could kind of use that cash to pay for its corporate debt. So it has gone default, but not as materially default, right? So right now Evergrande still stands. That's the only reason why we haven't seen any significant bankruptcy right now. But because the government can do a lot of different things, it has extreme power in kind of manipulate the market. So the entire real estate bubble crashing right now, it's already crashing because if you look at what happened in Shenzhen, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and all these different hyper big, really mega cities, you look at their house price because these housing prices just dropped around like 8 to 10% right now. That's a huge market correction. If you compare with what happened in the second tier city, we're talking about Suzhou, we're talking about Hangzhou, we're talking about many different cities, not as big as Beijing, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Shenzhen, not as big, but they're still very sizable. Their housing price could correct around more than 10% to 15%. And then if you look at, third tier cities, you look at those small cities, you're seeing another 30% of housing correction. And the reason why you haven't seen a lot of corrections and price drop in a luxury, house sector is because a lot of bureaucrats, a lot of officers been hiding their wealth and their assets, and they put this money inside of these mansions, big house, especially in Shenzhen Bay and in Beijing and etc. Because their money, it's difficult for them to move the money abroad. Because if they wish to move the money abroad, they could they could go to jail. They could be just disappear just because of that. So as a matter of fact, we are right now seeing what happened to Japan earlier, and in Japan that was a huge and a very severe housing market bubble collapse. But in China right now, we're witnessing a much slower version and apparently more ambiguous and more, not so transparent kind of housing market collapse. We're seeing these slow motion of housing market collapsing, but it doesn't mean that there is no housing market collapsing right now. So right now, I believe the government is trying to create a facade, trying to facade and put a facade in, to pretend that you're not in crisis, that the crisis right now be dealt with, and they're trying to bring out another excuse that they are launching massive stimulus so they could somehow trigger the economy and grow that something that the Wall Street people really want, because the Wall Street people are trying to do business with Chinese people. They're trying to do business with the super rich. They wish the market could still expand, but I don't think so. So I don't think the Chinese stimulus policy gonna work because most of the stimulus policy ran dry in 2008. So I don't think what would you do? Would you build another like Gaotie? You build more I don't know, super railway, or you build more new houses? How are you going to fix the entire thing? Because most of the job employment, if you look at the labor market, what really drives the real estate market sector is that you're seeing a much slower PMI. You're seeing a lot of you don't see as many export orders, and people, the Western countries, they are reducing their reliance on Chinese markets. So they are basically They are ordering less merchandise. They are ordering less products from China. So you're not creating as much wealth. You're slowly, China is slowly being replaced as a wealth factory. And right now we are seeing these process. We are seeing this slow motion process because most of the Western companies right now don't really want to iterate the Chinese government. So they would rather keep things in low profile and don't really say much about it because it could keep impact their revenue, and you know what would happen, right? So due to the above reasons, that's why I believe that Paul Krugman had the point that he thinks, even though you don't see really, he explained a lot of details in what happened in Japan, but he didn't, ex he didn't give much of the details of what really happened in China, because for now China is like the perfect black box for Westerners. So it would be really difficult if you want to really learn about China. It could take, even though if you are teaching English in China, you work there, it probably takes more than 10 years for you to really know what's happening. you know you have the language barrier, and also you have different mandate when understanding things, and and the government prefer to hide everything in secret, and they have so many different standards to different people. So they are just very good at putting charade. They are very good at you know putting these masks. So it will be extremely difficult for international investor to really know what's going on here. So thank you guys for watching for these videos, and I believe, uh, I thank you guys for watching. The reason why I am, of course, I'm bearing risk. I'm bearing unforeseeable risk, and I don't know how long I can keep this going. But I hope if you find this video worth listening, please spread it and share it, so let everyone to really know about what really happened inside the Chinese financial market. So I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.